Okay, students, this is instructor Adela Kowalski Garza, and I'm going to tell you 5 things that you need to know about the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment says, it's part of the Bill of Rights, and it says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Okay, so what does that mean? What does the Fifth Amendment mean? Number 1, grand jury for felony cases. The Fifth Amendment gives you and me and everyone the right to a grand jury indictment in felony cases. What is a grand jury indictment? Well, a grand jury is a group of people that are selected from the community, and they gather or they get together in private, in secret, to discuss whether or not certain cases should be indicted, and they should proceed to a petite jury to find out if that person committed that crime or not. Basically, they decide whether there's probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed by a person, and that person should be brought in to justice to face those crimes in a petite jury, the jury that actually decides whether that person is guilty or not. Now, the purpose of the grand jury is a filtering, I call it like a filtering device to make sure that people like you and me don't go through formal charges without a lot of people looking at it and making sure they are correct in accusing you and me and people like us of crimes, and then for us to face certain crimes. It's a filtering device. So let's say a person is suspected of committing a crime, and it's a felony crime, and so then the police find evidence and they present it to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor decides that evidence is enough to believe there's probable cause to believe. Probable cause does not mean that it's beyond all doubt or beyond a reasonable doubt that this person committed a crime. Probable cause just means that there is some probability that this person committed a crime. There is a fair probability that this person committed a crime. And so therefore, then the police present that evidence to the prosecutor, the district attorney's office if it's a state case, or the U.S. attorney's office if it's a federal case, the prosecutor for the government or the state of Texas or whatever state. And then the prosecutor looks at it and sees, there's enough evidence here to believe that this person committed this crime. Let me put it together in an indictment and show it to a grand jury and see if the grand jury agrees that there's probable cause to believe that this person committed a crime, a felony crime, a crime that can be punished by more than a year in prison. So see all the filtering devices. Those are devices that our judicial system has put in place to secure innocent people from being harassed by law enforcement, by the government, so that before somebody is placed in a situation where they have to go to court and be accused of a crime, there's certain safeguards for that, so that people are not unnecessarily harassed. So first we have the police officer's view, then it's reviewed by the prosecutor, and then it's reviewed by the grand jury. And that is a right that is given to us by the Fifth Amendment, the grand jury for felony cases. That particular right, the grand jury right, applies only to federal cases, not to state cases, but most states, including Texas, has grand jury right for felony cases, not misdemeanor cases. Misdemeanor cases don't go through a grand jury. They just go from the complainant to the police to the prosecutor to the judge or jury that decides whether the person is guilty or not. If it's a felony case, because it's a more serious case and punished more severely, then the process is the police, then the prosecutor reviews it, then the grand jury reviews it, and then you go to a jury to decide whether this person committed the crime or not beyond a reasonable doubt. So wow, there's a lot of reviews before a person ends up in a trial to see if they're guilty or not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the crime that they are accused of in the indictment. So that's number one. Number two, the Fifth Amendment gives us a protection against double jeopardy. What is double jeopardy? Double jeopardy means that if you go to trial on a case and the jury says, we don't think there's enough evidence, and they find you not guilty, the prosecution cannot do it again. Oh, I didn't like that result, so I'm going to indict them again and have a second chance, a second bite at the apple. No, the Fifth Amendment prohibits that. However, you must remember that the Fifth Amendment's prohibition against double jeopardy is limited to the jurisdiction that charge was in. Let me give you an example of that. An example of that is a famous case here in Brownsville called the Dora Cisneros case. And in that particular case, Dora Cisneros was accused of having committed of having hired two Mexican nationals to come to Cameron County, Rancho Viejo, to murder the ex-boyfriend of her daughter. And Dora Cisneros was accused of that and indicted by the state of Texas. Unfortunately for the state of Texas, even though they got a conviction, it went to a jury, she was found guilty, but then she appealed, and there was an error, a fatal error in the jury instructions, and the Court of Appeals had no other choice but to acquit her, because the jury charge, which is the law that the jurors need to follow, placed her as the actual person that had actually done the killing, when in fact she was not the person that had done the killing. She was a person that had hired to do the killing. So she was guilty under the law of parties, not as the actual person that had done the killing. And because of that, there was this discrepancy in the jury instructions and the evidence. The Court of Appeals said there's no evidence that supports the jury charge that she was the actual killer, so they had to acquit her. So then she was free because of a mistake that the prosecutor did, and the judge, both. So then the federal prosecutor looked at the case and said, I believe there's federal jurisdiction in this case because under the Commerce Clause, the defendant used international phone calls that has a federal connection to it, and she hired 2 Mexican nationals from another country to come to the U.S. So because of that, the federal government had jurisdiction. They indicted her again in federal court for the same offense, and that did not violate the double jeopardy clause because it was a different jurisdiction. It's a different world. It's a different set of rules. So if it's a different jurisdiction, that is not double jeopardy, okay? It has to be in the same jurisdiction, same offense. But the Fifth Amendment does give you that protection, the protection to not be placed in double jeopardy, not having to defend yourself, not defend yourself, but not having to go through a trial and the same accusations after one jury also had already found you innocent or not guilty of that crime. Okay, number 3. The Fifth Amendment also gives you the protection of no self-incrimination, meaning you cannot be forced, you cannot be compelled, you cannot be ordered to confess to a crime. Whether you committed the crime or not committed that crime, that's irrelevant. The Fifth Amendment gives you the right to remain silent. And because the prosecutor, the accuser, is the one that has the burden of proof, is the one that needs to prove that you've committed the crime, and or that, not you, but the accused committed the crime. The burden of proof lies on the prosecution because there is a presumption of innocence, and the accused is presumed innocent, not innocent, he's presumed innocent until proven guilty. And so that is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful right. We cannot be tortured to confess. That comes from no self-incrimination. All right. It also gives us the right to due process. You cannot be deprived of your life, your liberty, or your property without a just cause and without a fair trial. Due process means a fair trial. There has to be a reason why they're going to put you in jail, take away your property. There has to be a reason, and there has to be a fair process, a fair trial where evidence can be presented and evidence can be rebutted that you did or didn't do whatever they say they did, and you have to have notice. And all of that, those rights are sacred and they're given to you and to me by the Fifth Amendment. And number 5, the government cannot take away your property unless they pay for it with just compensation. All right, so that is, in a nutshell, the Fifth Amendment, a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful right that we have. Thank you. Amen.